Preparing an investor-ready cap table can be really difficult if you've never done it before. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how easy it can be. We're going to follow these steps together. I'm going to walk you through it step by step, and by the end, you'll know exactly how to prepare your cap table. Okay, so here we are, and this is a basic cap table, and I'm going to show you how to fill it in and then how it should look at the end and how everything fits together. So typically a good way to do this is to break everything up into tabs. So as you can see here, I have a summary tab at the bottom, then I have what's called a capitalization tab, common stock, Series A, which is, we're going to say that's our first investor. You could put that as seed, whatever. And then a stock plan as well. And I'm going to show you each of these tabs except for the capitalization tab, because capitalization is just all the shares of both the common stock, the Series A, and whatever together. And we're just going to leave that alone for the sake of this argument and the sake of what we're doing today. But I'm going to walk you through everything else. And I'm going to put in all the information for you so you can see how to do this, so you can see how it works. So here you go, and you can see here's our summary. We have no shares outstanding yet. The company has authorized, in this mythical example here, the number of shares. We've authorized 20 million shares of common stock, and we've authorized 3.5 million shares of Series A stock. And this is what's called preferred stock. So your investors are all going to get preferred stock. You and your employees are going to get what's called common stock. So what does this work out to? 3.5 million divided by 20 million. Let's go figure that out. So as you can see here at the bottom, this is the total number of fully diluted shares, is right now 23.5 million shares. Now, as you can see here, we have these very different functions. We have common stock, preferred stock, and a stock plan. And we're going to fill in all of these. But right now you can see here what the founders are kind of thinking in terms of how much they're going to give up, or the maximum they're going to give up at their company. So if we take that 3.5 million of preferred stock and divide that by the total of 23.5 million, let's take a look at what that equals. That equals maybe 15% of the company, 14.8% to be exact. So what they're saying is, okay, maybe we'll give up at most 14.8% of the company. Now, obviously, if they want, they can increase the number of preferred shares authorized or whatever. They can do whatever. But at least in this example, it gives you kind of an idea of what they're thinking. So now let's go through what ends up happening. So they ink a deal with their investors for a deal of $3 million, okay? They get investors to give them $3 million. So remember this, they're going to get $3 million. But let's first, before we do that, let's figure out what each of the three founders in this particular situation owns. We're going to move here to the common area. Okay, we click on common. Click on common, there we go. And as we said, we have three founders. That's what we're going to show you here. And you can see we've got employees 1 through 10 or whatever, certificate 1, 2 through 10. But let's take a look at what each of these three founders have. So of the three founders, the CEO, this is employee number 1, and we're going to call employee number 1 the CEO. Okay. CEO wanted 60%. That was the agreement. So 60%, we're going to say 6 million shares. Okay. Employee number 2, that is the CTO. In this particular example, CTO. You can see. All right. And the CTO, let's say, gets 4 million shares. Okay. Oops, got to go back. Let's do that again. 4 million shares. Okay, so now 6 million and 4 million. You can see right now if it was just two founders, 60-40, 10 million shares between the two of them. Employee number 3, let's say that is a senior engineer. So you have 2 engineers and a founder. That's very typical for a founding team. And this person gets 2 million shares. Okay, so now we've got 2 million. So now we've got 12 million shares. You can see how this divides up the common stock. Okay, now if they added employees over time, there'd be further dilution of the common stock over time if they bought the stock. Now this is stock. This is different than stock options. I really want to make this clear. So this is owned by these three founders at this point. There will likely be a vesting schedule put in. There should be for everybody's protection, both the investor's protection and the founder's protection, just in case a founder doesn't work out, which happens all the time. So now let's go to our summary table again. See what it looks like. Now suddenly you can see we've got 12 million shares here, but we haven't filled in the Series A. So now let's say that in negotiations between the two parties, the investors have said, okay, we're going to pay $1 a share. We're going to give you $3 million, okay? So $3 million for the company. We're going to give you $3 million and we want 15% or whatever it's going to be. Let's just say, actually, let's say it's closer to 20%. So let's say that they want 20%. So let's see how that works out. So 3 million, that should be, if my math is right, what would 20% of the company be? Well, 3 million, it's not going to be, by the way, 3 million divided, whatever it's going to be into 12. 20% of 12 would tell you that that's going to be, if my math is right, that's 2.4 million shares. But this is, you got to think post money here. So the post money is, remember that you've got 12 million shares here at $1. Let's say it's $1 a share for percentage purposes. Now I add 3 million to that. That gets me to 15 million shares. So I'm going to say it's $1 a share. That gets me to my 20%. Let's see what happens. So now I go here. I've got investor one, investor two, and let's say that there's also a smaller investor, an angel investor. And let's say that the price per share is $1 for each. Okay, and the share is issued at $1 a share to get to our numbers. Okay, 1.5 million shares is split between the two investors. So 1.5 for the first investor, for the second investor, and the third investor gets 100,000. Just putting in $100,000. So now you can see here, we've got 3.1 million shares. Let's see how this breaks up. Let's go back to our summary table. Aha! So you can see, it's exactly as I said. You can see how this works. This is a common mistake that founders make, is that they take the 12 million and say, oh, it's 12 million, 20% is 2.4. Well, no, it's actually, you have to add in the money that's put in afterwards. So let's say your company is where the pre-money, let's say, is 12 million in this example. The post-money, I've just added in 3.1 million, gets me to roughly 15 million or so. At $1 a share, it's $15.1 million is the post-money valuation of the company at this point in time. And you can see how this breaks up. It's roughly 80% for the founders, they own the common, 20% for the investors, plus that $100,000 that we gave the angel investor, but we still have a stock plan to deal with. Now, what's that about? Well, remember, you're going to have employees. And one of the interesting negotiations that you get into with your investors is how much should you give and carve out for future employees. Now, remember, this isn't for all time. This is going to be for maybe the next year, the next 2 years. There's some investors that like to do this and say, okay, what do you need for the next 2 years? And you figure that out and you agree. Other investors, in fact, this was the case with my investors, they wanted only 1 year. So figure out what you need for 1 year, Brett, come back to us, tell us, and we're going to carve that out. And that's what I did. So let's say in this particular case that you've decided that you need, as you figure everything out here, that you need for the next 2 years, let's say it's 2 years in your particular case, that you need roughly 2 million shares, which is roughly, if you think about that, 2 million into 15% is roughly going to be about 14% or so, I believe. We'll see how good my math is, but let's figure that out. So now we go here to stock plan. So you can see here now I've added in an employee number 4, 5, and 6, because remember, you already have 3 employees. This is 3 of you. And we're not going to go in, and I'm not going to go in and add in things. And there can be a price per share. And this is a typical price per share that stock options would be granted with after a company gets funded. Very typical numbers here. And you can kind of see here the various things that might be in a spreadsheet like this. And there's more stuff actually to the right of this, the vesting commencement date, date of exercise, etc. And I can show you that actually if you'd like. In fact, why don't I do that for you? You can see this, vesting commencement date, date of exercise, date of cancellation, because guess what? Stocks get canceled as well. Number of options exercised, number of options canceled, shares repurchased, etc., vesting, and any notes that there might be. Notice here, share pool history. You also want to keep a history of this. When did the board authorize this? Very important. Okay, and shareholders approval. When did the shareholders authorize this as well? And typically these are kind of synonymous in early stage companies. So now let's fill this in. You can see here what I've done. This would be, by the way, very typical that you and your financial person should do. By the way, any good financial person that you bring on should know exactly how to do this. So you can see here, stock pool plan. Stock pool plan. This is the total number of authorized shares. Now in our example, it's going to be 2 million. This is what we agreed to with our investors. So let's put that in correctly. I put in 20 million. Let's put that in right. Okay, so now you can see I've got 2 million shares here. Now what are these other things? Because I know you're wondering what they are. The first one is ISOs. What is that? That is an incentive stock option granted. This is for your employees. That's typically what this would be. It's an internal thing for top management, your employees. This is what they get. So now what's an NSO? An NSO is what's called a non-qualified stock option. Now a non-qualified stock option is a type of employee stock option. It's also something that you might give a contractor as well, wherein you pay the ordinary income tax on the difference between the grant price and the price at which you exercise the option. That's for the employee's standpoint or for your contractor's standpoint. That's how that works. Now, typically, these are given usually they're given to contractors, not your employees. ISOs are going to be for your employees for the most part, and NSOs are going to be given to contractors. But you want to have both written down here, and then you'll list in your table who got what, so to speak. So now remember, we filled in this 2 million shares. So how does this look? Now, by the way, let me get to one other thing here. Also, have a key for your vesting schedule. Notice what I've done here. I've got a key here so people can understand what's going on. Now, typically, most stock option vesting plans have a cliff in them. Notice 25% at 1 year, then 1/48 after. That's a 4-year vesting period. Okay, CIC provisions, we won't get into that. There's board approval for that. And then you can see here, number 3, these can be different types of things that are going on. You may have different things that you've given different people. You can see here 1/48 of the option shall vest monthly anniversary vesting commencement date. For example, I might give this to a board member, for example, rather than having a 1-year cliff. Or I might give this to an outside contractor that I'm working with because it's just not fair for them to have a 1-year cliff. Let's say I also have a 2-year agreement with somebody. This would be 1/24 monthly. You can have various plans. You just want to show what this is so that it's easy for your investors to see what's going on. That's what this is about. Now let's go back to the summary table and let's see what happens. Okay, so here we go. You can notice now we've given 2 million shares. We're saying we're going to give away 11% of the company, potentially in the next 2 years, to our employees. And you can see the various dilutions that have happened. Remember, we were at 79%, now we're down to 70. So we've been diluted, which makes sense. If you think about this, if you take 79% and take 11% out of that or whatever it's going to be, you're going to get diluted roughly, by 10% or so. You're going to lose 10% of your options, which is what happened here. And now your Series A, well, they lost 1.7%, which makes sense because they own less of the company than you do. So you're going to take the brunt of the dilution here. But you don't take all of it, which is interesting. And over time, this will be a fight that your Series A investors will have with the Series B investors will be, well, who should take the next stock pool dilution that happens? Should the Series A investors take it or should the Series B investors? And a little pro tip for you here. You know what your thought is on this? You are neutral. You are Switzerland, so to speak. You are absolutely neutral in these discussions. You do not care. You just want to make sure your employees are taken care of because that's how you win. So there's the basics of how you set up a cap table. If you get this right, and this is really simple to do, you have everything interlocked. It's really easy for potential investors to see what's going on. They have the summary here. So now they can see the summary of everything. They can see what the common owns. They can see what the Series A owns. They can see what the employee plan is, options outstanding, options available to grant. This is obviously going to change over time, and the totally fully diluted shares, etc. So now they can see all this. They can see what the common owns. Let's go back to that. See all the employees as this fills in over time. As more employees buy stock, which can be what happens, then this changes. And then they can see the Series A, what they own as well. So they can see what the investors own and how that plays out and who's got what. So there you go. That's how this works. And then, of course, you've got your stock pool as well in terms of what's going on here. So there you go. That's how this works. Hope this helps. Let's go back to our summary tab. I am Brett at brettjfox.com. Have a great, great day.